Hi everybody, I'm Ubercoo, and today I'm going to be reviewing Private Benjamin. And I haven't been busy basically the past couple weeks, and haven't been able to get to the other movie reviews as much as I'd like. But now I'm going to be able to get to those a little more regularly. Um, this movie I thought it was really good. It was stars Goldie Hawn and a bunch of other cast. I got a bunch of notes here I was going to talk about as well. Uh, to start, I'm going to start with the basics. Basically, it's a film by Howard Zieff, Zieff. It was made back in 1980. It was released in 1980, around October. And it's got a score of Rotten Tomatoes like 88% or something like that. Goldie Hawn, she won Best Actress for this movie. There's a lot of it's a packed movie. I'll say that too. There's a lot that happens in this movie. At least towards the middle. Towards the end, it kind of slows down a bit, but overall, it's fairly paced. I do want to start off by saying that it is a movie about um, empowerment and independence, trying to find your own way, and from something that has been constructed for you. Um, I think fundamentally, I'm going to take a second to, if you strip away all the details of the actual story and just look at the framework, right, the architecture, uh, it's a story about putting it into fairy tale terms. I think of like something like Aladdin with Princess Jasmine, or some other fairy tale type um, princess that's locked in a castle, right? They can't leave. The encapsulation, entrapment of and indoctrination of someone else's ideals into your own that you don't have control over. That being said, I'm going to start off with the beginning title of the film. There's actually an intro with it. It starts off with, "When Judy Benjamin was 8 years old, she confessed her life's desire to her best friend. 'All I want,' Judy whispered, 'is a big house, nice clothes, two closets, a living maid, and a professional man for a husband.'" Now, as I was just saying about the idealism, that actually comes from. Let me start here. Actually, let me go before I do that. This movie has layers to it, so like as you watch the film, you actually are you learn a new angle about the film. Like it's just um, there's it's interesting the way that they structure the film in that aspect. It's like one thing, it leads to the next, but you're also peeling off a new layer of information that you did not know about before. In this instance, it sets you up with a basic story about the actual uh, what. Oh yeah, and after that it says, "Today all of her dreams come true." That was the last part about it. Cut to the beginning of the wedding, and or like in the ceremony of the wedding, and it's between her and Goldie Hawn and Albert Brooks. His name was Yale. So they seem to be in love, and they're eager to get married, and they But as you watch and continue with the film, you get to see that there's more to it. You find out that he's controlling. He comes from well, they all come from this wealthy upper middle class wealthy type Jewish family, which they mention in the film. And so there's a the way they present it is that like it's a good time, but at the same time it's very, you find out how controlled it is to get there, right? Like towards the later in the film, you find out about, oh, this isn't necessarily her first marriage. That's just one example. You get to find out about, oh, okay, there's new information that comes to light. That's what I mean. So like at this point, they're just having a good time at the wedding and things like that. Then they go through the whole sequence and have a fabulous time. Uh, then cut to a scene where it's Albert Brooks and he's trying to get Goldie Hawn to give him a BJ, basically. He's like, "Come on, babe, come on," and he's acting like a kind of a spoiled kid. Um, but I think that all goes back to both their this environment of, you know, of the old school model of the uh, filling the role of both men and women, and it's just being the next generation of that, right? You know, men should be this; they should be the protectors and the ones that make the money, and you know, blah blah, blah. And the women have to stay at home, and all this, you know, all these old antiquated type roles that, you know, people have to think they have to live by. Um, with that, yeah, so he convinces her to uh, give him a BJ, and he you also see that she gets hit on by other guys that, you know, she could have been with, and things like that. It's just them showing their you know oh, just another guy trying to come up, you know, trying to come to her, right? Even on her wedding day. Um, from there, so they after the BJ scene, that actually cuts right to them talking to their parents, right? And when they're talking to their parents, there's a funny scene where the dad's talking about his little girl and like growing up and all this, you know, this protective fatherly, you know, conversation and whatnot. He and then it's when it cuts to them looking at each other because they just, you know, he just got a BJ from her, and like there's a funny moment they just look at each other. They go through the standard routine. Here's a bunch of money for the wedding gift, and you know, we're gonna set you up for a nice life, and blah blah blah. From there, then they after the wedding, that's when he actually uh, Albert Brooks is on the phone. He's talking to a partner of his, just trying to, you know, continue his workaholic, controlling self. And you see that, oh, he's gonna, you know, he's even kind of wanting to skip over his honeymoon. Doesn't even feel, uh, isn't even an escape from his work, right? You know, he's still on the job. So with that, he's also wanting to control um, her, right? In the same aspect, it's as just another thing, and it it's unfortunate. And then so he then goes up to her. He wants to start, you know, basically just having sex with her and stuff like that. Well, and she doesn't want to do that because she wants to do. She sees that already going through her life that she's already been in outside of her control, and you're seeing the seeds of her self growth in that moment of like she doesn't want to, and she, you know, she wants to make it special, right? um, but also wants to go along with it because she wants to oh, that's right. I totally forgot. She has a conversation with her dad about not getting married, I believe, and like, and so her father wants her to get married, you know, and again, it goes to the controlling aspect of the male figure. Um, the From there, then Albert Brooks is trying to get sex on his wedding night and like forcing himself onto her, and she doesn't want it. So at that point, that's considered intermarital rape, I guess. I don't know the terminology, but the so the so in that process, when they're actually having sex, then he actually has like a heart attack or a stroke or something, and that's when he dies. Now, when he dies, that's when it cuts again to peel a new layer. It cuts right to the funeral, and so she's overly depressed and she's trying to go through this whole process. She's seeing her whole life being shattered. This pristine ideal life that was supposed to be built up is now gone. You know that. So she doesn't know what to do. She then comes across one of the she's talking to various family members trying to console her and stuff like that, but it's not really helping. She finds that there's a one of the gifts that were given to her for the wedding is that's just basically her breaking point, and she just couldn't take it anymore, and she starts running away. Then you see her at like a hotel. It's been like a week later, and she's talking to a local radio station. The local disc jockey is actually having other people call in to make an opinion and see what she should do. One of those opinions that calls in is actually offering her something. It doesn't specify what to actually offer her. I'm actually going to that now. And what it really is a setup is to meet this dude at tomorrow for a new opportunity in life. But I don't think they actually specify what. When they do meet, it's actually Harry Dean Stanton, the dude from like Alien and Green Mile and like famous, right? And then you find out that he's in the military recruiter, right? So again, you're following the story and you're learning new things along the way, which is really interesting. It's not like here's an exposition dump, here's an exposition dump. It's gradually throughout the film. It seems it's kind of a mystery. It's kind of a mystery, and how you're not sure how to feel about the world as it develops. So then, during the meeting between the recruiter and Judy, she is it just she breaks down because she thinks about the gifts again, and like her, and it's just another reminder of her old life, and so she breaks down. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but that's what it came across as. Um, Harry Dean Stanton, he asks, he's like, "What are you thinking about right now?" And she's like, "I'm thinking about the gifts in my life," and she's just distraught, right? At that point, now during this time in this meeting, he's being concerning, but he's also throwing her the pitch, right? He's still being the dude. He's still being the representative for the army. He's still trying to get her recruited. So like he is taking advantage of her, but like it's a dichotomy, right? In one aspect he's taking advantage of her in her state of weakness, but at the same time it's also offering her a chance to rebuild on her own. So it's kind of a give and take. But I thought that was an interesting dichotomy that they have in the film, or in the film. When she actually joins to the army, and I'm going to skip a lot of the details because if you've seen one 80s film, you've seen them all. They're all basically the same, right? There's how many push-ups can you do? Get on the ground. All that. If you've seen 180 movies, you've seen them all. There is the Drill Sergeant L.C. Ross by Hal Williams, and he's an African American black guy who's he plays one of the few positive male models in the film. I consider Harry Dean Stanton also a positive character. Like, I think they tried to make him out as the opportunist, but he does seem like a caring dude. So I'll give him the positive on that. But yeah, the Ross character, he's also a positive character in the film. Um, the There's also a character later on in the film who's also a side character, who's going to be Judy's new boss. And I think she said he was Turkish, and he was a nice guy. I think the only real negative characters in the film that they were really identifying was the the white male type authority figure, her father, the colonel, her French boyfriend, and her first husband. We don't even know what happened to, or second husband, excuse me. We don't even know what happened specifically with the first. I think probably she fell in love. I'm gonna just random backstory it. She probably fell in love and it didn't work out. They didn't allow her to get married or something, or like they didn't allow her to stay married. So from there, she actually gets to join the army. She meets the drill sergeant and the captain, who's played by Eileen Brennan. Mrs. Peacock from Clue, who's hilarious. One of my favorite movies is Clue. They are both playing the role of the army, like they're trying to fit in that world, compared to the rich family trying to fit in that world. You know, they're trying to abide by the authority of the basically the white man at this point. That's what's in the presentation of the film. From there, it's let's see here. She actually meets all her friends, and she gets to all the people involved. There's like this one girl with brown hair, and the one girl with brown hair, she's kind of like the suck up, right? With the brown nose, trying to do the best, you know. She's the one who gets really close to Eileen's character, Captain Doreen Lewis. And so, like, she's always trying to get under her, right? Let's see here. From there, then, she doesn't like it. She's just having a struggle to stay in the army. You know, can't keep up with the basics of the, you know, just not getting it and wanting to stay in line, and you know, she's still used to the old world that she's used to, right? Not having to work isn't that hard, and she wanting to be pampered, and the princess effect, right? So the she has to learn to let that go, and that's when, at that point, she can't take it anymore. She actually gets into a fight with one of the other girls over a blanket. She can't stand it after that. She loses the fight and just leaves. She starts hopping the fence. That's when the captain finds out. The captain is actually in a side story with Greg T. Nelson, who's a different sergeant, I believe, in the film. And so they're kind of in a relationship, right? In that relationship, so that's going to pay off later in the film. She has to give that up to then catch up to Benjamin trying to escape. They actually punish the whole group of women in the platoon for her mistake, as the common tactic of the military, and they will. So they're walking around in a big circle. At the same time, her parents show up and find out that they didn't know that she was in the army this whole time. They actually found out a stranger called them and told them that they were in the army. presumably, I think it was probably supposed to be the actual captain, because they were setting her up to be a good character. They just wanted the girl, the actual women to succeed. That's what they were setting her up as. And then after that, she actually gives her the choice. She actually puts a good presentation up about what Judy's been up to. She says, she's been popular with the other girls, and she's, been progressing in the army, But if you want, it's up to you, Judy. If you want to continue on, or if you want to go home, you can certainly do that. You're going to sign right here. And she forces that in a way that, just the same way her dad would do, or some other authority figure. And so turning that that reverse psychology on her, and so that way it motivates her to be more self-independent, which she does. She decides to stay in the army, and then I think that's a good redeeming quality about the captain. That now from that point, that's when you see the turn in the character for Judy, who's actually in the process of she's actually getting the hang of it now. She's making her bed correctly. She's able to keep up with the running, and she's getting the groove back, right? She's finding that independence. She's and then there's a training moment, right, where they actually go into the woods, and there's like a red versus blue team, and they got the bandage on the arm to identify the two. She's part of the blue team along with the captain. Greg T. Nelson's character, the other sergeant, is actually is in charge, the commander of the red team. Now, this is where it gets kind of confusing, because up to this point, she doesn't necessarily like Benjamin too well, but she also kind of helped her out, so it seems like she's a good character. But then she actually puts her in the swamp along with a lot of the other women of the same platoon in the swamp, just to kind of keep her out of the way. At the same time, Judy, Benjamin, and all the rest of the gang, they stumble upon the red team. So at that point, then they actually find a way to trick some of the guards of the red team in capturing them, and then having like a domino effect, right? Like guerrilla style of taking over the red team little bit by little bit by little bit. From there, that's when they find out the Greg T. Nelson, as the commander, is actually having an affair with the suck-up girl, the brown-haired girl, who was in the same platoon from earlier. Now, there's no context in that where it shows them having a previous relationship. It wasn't like there's a previous scene where Greg T. Nelson's kind of hitting on her or anything like that. It's just showing them fooling around with their topless and making out. I think the way they present it in the film is that it's supposed to be an indication of the male figure taking over and using the position of power onto the woman. So but at the same time, there's no context to that. And yeah, it's not like he said, "Hey, do you want to hang out this day?" or something like that. They kidnap him, or not kidnap him, but they take him hostage because that's the game, and so they bring him back to the main base. At the same time, the colonel of the whole base, what is his name? Thornbush. So Colonel Thornbush is actually in charge of the Thorn Birds. Now, because he gets actually impressed by Judy Benjamin, and then actually invites her to be part of the Thorn Birds. The rest of the women, they actually get their own positions in other parts of the army. There is a scene where the captain actually comes in drunk the next day, as the girl, all the women are celebrating, along with the sergeant, the positive male figure. He is, or she gets drunk basically and falls down and just kind of makes an ass of herself. Um, and then like, oh Judy, you got the best of me, didn't you? And then like, yes, I did, ma'am. So I think that if they left it off there, it would have been fine. They continue it on. Then at that point, Judy decides to use the women to get a prank on the captain. They actually dye the water blue, so that way the next day at the commencement of the graduation, that Eileen is basically her skin's blue. Which it's a funny gag, but I just thought it was kind of unnecessary. Like you set up the character to be good, but then not. You know what I'm saying? Or like you're. I thought it was uncalled for the character of Judy to go out of her way to at least do the prank. I can understand getting back at her kind of for being mean about or being overdoing her job with the you get what I'm saying, right? So with that, there's actually they go on leave. A lot of the women go on leave, and they actually meet. Judy meets this French dude through a friend of a friend, and he's basically Mr. McDreamy, right? He's the he knows how to he speaks French. He smokes. He does all this stuff, right? He's a perfect dude. They get together for one night. There's actually a scene where in the training where a lot of the women actually have a great bonding moment, and then Judy describes about the moment about when her second husband died, and then you actually find out her first husband, they were together for 6 months, or excuse me, 6 weeks, and then her second husband for 6 hours. So, and then the way she describes it is that when he was dying, that they were making love and not that he was basically forcing himself on her. And I thought that was admirable in her sense. She was taking the high road and saying that and leaving a good memory, because they seemed to both love each other, but they were still stuck in that previous world. So there was another part in that same scene where basically talking about orgasms and she's never had one, and then eventually she meets the French dude and finally has an orgasm. They had to go their separate ways. The French dude has to go back to France, and she joins the Thornbirds. There's a montage sequence of that a lot, so that way she's learning how to jump out of the plane and be a paratrooper, I guess. And when she gets up into the plane, at that point she gets really scared. She doesn't want to die, and she just panics. And now, before I go that far, Thornbird or Thorn Bush seems like a decent dude. They set his character up like a decent guy. He's joking. He's lovable. He's got a wife. He's got a dog. They bring him to the base. Now, at any point, they didn't show any form of indication that he was into her or anything like that. He was just a good dude, right? And then cut to, she's panicking on the plane, and she doesn't want to. She doesn't want to continue on, and then he just goes after her, right? He tries to just basically rape her on the plane, which didn't totally make sense because there was no setup to that. Like, they could have had a moment when they're in the Jeep and he looks at her like, hey, or anything like that, but he didn't. He just doesn't do that. He just goes after her. At that point, I think it was a way for the writers to find a way to get Judy to get her to France to meet the French dude. But at the same time, the French dude just is a cheater anyway, and he come to find out he's banging the maid. So he actually convinces the French dude, when she goes to France, they stay together for a while, and then they find out about that. Actually, I may have to pause it for part 2.